Alright guys, so let's continue with the rune first impressions. Remember, first impressions. This isn't a detailed, crazy review. If that's what you're looking for, you can obviously tune in later when I've got more of one for you. Many of these I haven't even tested out just yet. But yeah, if you guys don't know and you've been out of the loop, there's been a ton of rune changes seeking to improve them. And I got through a fair chunk yesterday. We're going to continue along here today. Now, there were some things you guys pointed out that I do want to make known. First of all, let's go back to the Death Nova runes. So all the way up here to Afflicted. I had a lot of comments on this. I'm assuming because it appeared early in the video. People don't often make it late into the videos. But so we talked about how it got the 10% condition duration on there instead of bleed duration. Well, now it's when you kill a foe, you create a Death Nova at the location instead of when you are down. So yeah, this is one of the little things that will be a casualty of doing first impressions. This is kind of amazing. So it's now much more likely to proc frequently. The 15-second ICD feels a bit long suddenly to me. I wish this was like 5 or even 10. And yeah, you can actually reliably trigger this. I still need to get a feel for how large the explosion is. If it's a really close, tight-knit point blank, it's not going to mean that much. But yeah, that was a pretty substantial thing. Another thing as well is all of the on-hit things. So like when we look at durability, it used to be when you get struck, give prot, regen, resistance, blah, blah, blah. The devs said that they wanted to refine these and change these because they were too clunky. And yet many still exist. Like on durability, this is still here. It's just at T6 now. One of the other things to note, though, is this used to be a 25% chance when you were struck for it to be a thing. It's now you just get it straight away. It's not. It's 100% chance now, and it's really just about the cooldown, which is fine to me. I didn't think we needed 2 mechanisms to counterbalance how frequently these things trigger. So yeah, that going up to 100% is a meaningful difference. I think even in just terms of clarity, and you can mouse over a rune and understand what it does quite quickly. Adding percents and more numerics and things for more casual players and people just glossing over stuff always kind of weighs the game down. So yeah, these are like at 100. So another thing I wanted to look at was Earth. Yeah, this, there was a big change here, okay? We didn't really talk about it enough. It used to be you get the magnetic aura when struck below 20%. This is now just when struck, okay? So if it used to be an RNG thing, it's like 100%. And if it used to be at a really low health threshold, it's now on the first hit. So this is really, really important and relevant, and I'm glad a couple of you guys pointed this out in the comments. What this basically means is back when with the old Earth runes, because it was at 20% health, you guys might not really have a good feel for that. On paper, you might know what that feels like, but actually in game, to see how low your health has to be hit below 20% health, it was really, it didn't happen very much. You're very close to death when you're below 20%. And remember, it's not get hit so that your resulting health after being struck is now below 20% health. It's be hit when you were already below 20%, which is, one-shot territory now, whereas any number of skills could just finish you off in that one strike. Now, at 100% health, the first time you get hit, you can trigger the reflect. So the quality of life that comes from that is huge, and they've counterbalanced it. It used to be 5-second duration. It's now 4. That's a lot of quality of life. Again, there's a reasonable amount of unblockable at the moment with a lot of the projectile-based damage, but I actually think that that's not a rune problem. That's a problem with the accessibility of the unblockable stuff, and it's those specific aspects of those skills and those traits and synergies that should be changed. So actually, I really like the look of Earth here. It's the same thing, get the aura, but your access to it is much better now, and that makes it a lot more reliable, even if it is still at the 90-second cooldown. There were some other minor little things, but all right, let's continue along. I think last we were looking at was Elementalist. Moving on to the next Profession rune. Again, I really like the idea of rune design. They should go in buckets. So like the profession-oriented runes should all kind of be about a certain flavor or idea that hooks into that specific profession. All the god-based runes should have a unifying theme. All the element-based runes should have a unifying theme. And the element-based ones do kind of now because they've got the auras, right? But, we'll see how far the devs went with this. Elementalist was kind of just all about hybrid pressure. But let's move on. So, in terms of split Condi and power. Engineer. So, Engineer used to be toughness and Condi damage. You may even question whether those are engineering kind of stats. And then it's while wielding a conjure weapon, environmental weapons, kits, banners, and stolen items gain 7% damage, which is a really weird T6 for the game at this point. This really goes way back when. I think the original implementation of this, it was just all about the fact that you had kits, so it's like do more damage with a kit. But the way it was coded, it meant that you'd also get this perk with other stuff. Really isn't that interesting, honestly, and feels a bit hazy and weird, especially when you look at the original mechanics for stealing on thieves. Kind of felt similar. You were actually stealing environmental weapons back then. So I wonder how the devs have changed this. We're still on toughness and condition damage. They still think of those as engineering stats. You get the extra condition packet at the end here, which equalizes the two essentially, and then the same 7%. So very minor change here. You just get a bit more condition damage. They just tried to bring it up a bit. Fine. Next, we've got Evasion. Fairly new rune set as far as I think of things. A Ferocity set. I don't believe this exists competitively. When you dodge, get swiftness. When you dodge, gain fury. This is way more prominent than the swiftness part. Getting fury on a dodge and a 10-second cooldown is kind of cool. And then when executing a dodge roll, deal a crippling strike to nearby enemies. As a rune set that only exists, I believe, in World versus World and PvE, you kind of have to change your lens for whether it's any good. Cripple on dodge is probably underrated by much of the community as well, especially if you're melee-oriented with your aggression. You want to keep hitting them. What if they change this to? Well, they've completely changed it. They don't like all these different on-dodge effects. And again, I feel like it's because, look, you've got this is what I talked about on the previous part. You have this rune set. If you equip it every dodge, you're essentially firing 3 different skills off on the server. I don't know whether there's 3 different animations. I doubt it. But I think that they're probably just trying to unify that stuff off, right? So let's see what they do instead. What? They're adding swiftness duration? They're adding swift... Oh, my God. I hope that there's some kind of swiftness change upcoming, because, my God, why? Ew, what a nerf. That doesn't feel very good. And then the T6 has turned into an extra packet of ferocity. Gains swiftness for 6 seconds after evading an attack. Ugh. Ew. Not first impression here. Don't like the look of this. Why would I ever run that rune set? I really can't imagine. It's not even on dodge, right? When executing a dodge gains swiftness, you can at least use that for out-of-combat mobility. This, if you're, like, wandering around in World versus World, and you're not on a 25% movement trait, and you don't have any swiftness, so you're like, oh, I'll get some swiftness runes, and you pick this won't even do it anymore, because it's on evade. That is what I would love the devs to talk about their thinking here. This blows my mind a little bit. All right, anyway, so fire, more element stuff. Power, might duration, gain might, burn duration, just a weird, you know, a flavorful addition, but no efficacy sense there. And then a fire aura below 80% health. Fire auras recently, if you're an LE, there's been a lot of changes. The fact you can transmute fire auras now, the fact that there's been some reasonable fire attunement changes recently that have meant you can cleanse additional times of fire auras. The game could keep pushing to a place where the value of fire runes and getting a fire aura increases over time. Let's see what they've done, though. Power and might duration. Oh, look at this. Gain a fire shield for 4 seconds when entering combat. So... this appears in a couple of different places on the Rune Overhaul. I know this because there were a couple of comments about it. This will never refresh in combat, though, ever. A lot of effects are like this. It's just like Brave Stride for the Warrior, where it's stab when you enter combat. The only way to refresh is by breaking combat and re-entering. I guess Rangers have been dealing with this mechanic for a long time because of First Strike, though they get other ways of refreshing First Strike, if I remember rightly, or Opening Strike, as it's called. So how this feels, I don't really know. But for some kind of Auramancy style thing with the fire things, over time this might be better. I wouldn't look at this rune in a vacuum. The fact it won't refresh, you only get it once, makes it feel a bit awkward if you want to use these for some kind of a supporty thing in PvE, long-term encounters. There's a real thing with Guild Wars at the moment where a significant subset of the community only has the mind and capacity to talk about raid stuff. And I think that entire selection of the community now would just immediately pan anything with this style of mechanism. But I don't know. Fire Shield, whenever you enter combat from a PvP perspective, it would probably refresh a reasonable amount of times. What else have we got? No ICD as well. So could you cheese that by in and out of combat somehow? I wonder. Then they've still got the burning duration on. Why? Look, I'm all up for flavor, but come on, ArenaNet. And then what else we got? When affected... Oh, hello. Oh. Wait, why's that got a cooldown on it? Why has this got cooldown 60 seconds? When affected by a fire aura, deal 10% damage. Does that have a duration that then expires and you can only get the buff again later? Okay, that's quite curious. But can I actually imagine a DPSE... Well, I don't know, actually, some fresh air variants, some fresh air weavers do actually get the fire aura very comfortably available. So you're looking at a 10% damage bonus. It would be basically this versus Scholar. You get the bonus instantly at the start of the fight because it combos with the T4. You miss a bit of ferocity. The burning duration is useless. The might duration is pretty uninteresting. It's close, but it's just like leaving a couple of dud things on there makes it feel a bit clunky. Interesting. This is one of the more interesting runes, though. First impressions on that. There's some ideas there, definitely. Huh. I wonder if you can share. If you can share that. Oh, I mean, now I'm talking pretty crazy territory here, actually, aren't I? The PvE ramifications of that would be a bit nuts, so let's not go there. All right, anyway, so moving on. Flame Legion. Power, burn duration, cause burning when you get hit. That was on a 25% chance. Burn duration again. And burning damage against burning foes. Oh, yes, Flame Legion, of course. Flame Legion is actually a pretty goddamn good rune set. This is like budget Scholar, as far as I was concerned, for many years. I really like Flame Legion. It's a great thing for leveling when you just sort of first create your character. You get a ton of good stuff on it. Let's see how they've changed it. Well, it looks like... I can't see a difference. Oh, okay, so the difference is they've changed the T4 into just even more burn duration. Wow, okay, I actually really like this rune set. Any kind of power-oriented build that's seeking to do flat damage but has burn capacity on it, I think would really like this. Because that's so much burn duration right there. You're 50% longer burns, and you've also got such an easy thing to upkeep for a good damage modifier. I actually really like this. This is kind of a choice rune for any power build that does that. The one thing I think of straight off the top of my head is, like, I don't know, a flamethrower NG or something, but as silly as that sounds, it would be a kind of a fun match for something like that. I guess Berserker splashes out a lot of random burns, even though it does a lot of flat damage. I like that. And it's simplified, again, getting rid of more effects and clutter. Moving on, we're at Flock. So Flock was always weird because it had healing on it. So 15% when instructors summon a bird, and this is like, you know, the Raven effect. You know, if you're a ranger and you use the Warhorn 4 and it summons all the birds that chew someone up. That it's like that, but only a single one that comes down. It's kind of hard to actually see. Then if you upgrade it to tier 4, it blinds. So basically, deal a packet of blind when you're being attacked. The chance was really low before, so if this rune gets the same treatment as we're about to look in a second, then this suddenly becomes a really interesting rune set because you get an actually reliable blind that just splashes out. In terms of counterplay and passive play and stuff and the prominence, I'm not actually sure I like the idea of that too much, so I wouldn't be sad to see if they change it completely. More heal power, and then when you use a healing skill, you and nearby allies are healed for a flat packet. In terms of flavor, I really have no idea what the devs are thinking of here. You've got, like, Flock and then a bit of a bird animation on it, but what's going on with the healing power? What's going on? This is one of the most uninteresting T6s I can imagine that you throw on something. Very, very weird. Why is Flock supportive? You tell me. What have they done? Well, it's still healing, and then they've given you Vitality. So look, here's the first time they've put Vitality on a set that also has the 10% maximum health thing on it, which I actually kind of like. So this would be like a really... this would be good Magi's, I guess? Because you get really healthy and then the... from the Magi's and then the 10% maximum health at the same time. And then they've got rid of all the bird stuff, again, which I'm not too sad about. I like the flavor of it and the visuals of it. But then when you use a heal skill, you and or nearby allies are healed for a small amount. So what is this got to do with Flock now? Why wasn't this renamed? Because they did rename some stuff. I know that the Flesh Reaver Sigil got its name renamed. What's that got to do with birds? Why was this a concept for a rune in the first place, to be honest? Why do we need a bird rune? So this is a support rune set that just makes you kind of healthier. I don't think that's distinct enough of a thing to be interesting to people in any way. Isn't there a Guardian trait that means the more health you have, the more benevolence you get? So maybe you'd pair it with that, but there's going to be better options. It's not got enough of a niche, so I think it's just going to be shouldered down from other things. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Not too impressed on Flock. Moving on, Forgeman. So toughness, burn duration, protection duration, toughness. So Forgeman, what we're actually looking at, this is like themed after the Iron Forgeman. So I think it's purely trying to revolve around that. That's why it's like got the protection and the burns and stuff. When struck below 50% health, gain protection and burn nearby foes. Well, what have they done? They've kept all the weird hodgepodge. I don't know. Sorry. So protection duration has turned into burn. There's a lot of burn duration rune sets now. Do you think the devs have paid any attention to, like, all right, we've got 7 sets that do burn duration, and we've only got 1 set that does bleed duration? That's not true, but, you know, the example I'm giving. Do you think there's any parity between the number? Because it feels like there's a lot of burn duration. Why did they end up going with burn duration here instead of protection duration? When, if you think about it, it's a toughness rune set. So someone looking to build toughness is probably going to enjoy the benefit of protection duration more than they are burn, right? Right? It's very, very strange to me that they doubled down on this, because it's a 50-50. Which one do you want to pick? I have no idea. It's like they just ran it through a machine, and they saw that T2 was burn, so they just filtered the rest of the tree with burn instead of looking a bit deeper. But anyway, yeah, a ton of burning on a toughness set. And then, last of all, they've changed the Forgeman into Fire Shield. So 100% chance when you're below 75% health, you get a Fire Aura. So this is interesting. The effect of the Fire Aura is actually stronger. So 1 proc of burning nearby foes. Or get a Fire Shield, which means as you are continually attacked, you can keep pulsing out burning nearby foes. So this is actually a lot more burn in theory because of the Fire Shield. And then Fire Shield also has trait interactions on some builds. Hell, if you were an Earth Ellie, you could get the protection back as well. This I kind of view as... This was probably like a unique skill that only existed as a rune skill and was just like there. And they get to delete this now. And they just threw something else that approximates it. That now leads to an interesting comparison with fire runes, doesn't it? So this is gain a fire shield when you enter combat versus gain a fire shield when you're below 75% health. It's weird. Do you see how these just like overlap in an odd way, I feel? I don't know. Not too excited or impressed on Forgeman. Next, Golemancer. So Golemancer is one of the dungeon rune sets. And I always actually quite liked it. It's ferocity and precision. So it's the ferocity stack, precision with it. I actually like this, and I've always reasonably liked this. You know, it's overshadowed by running power, and you just, you know, the other side of things. But I've always kind of liked this. And then the T6 was fun for the same reason Ogre runes were fun. 50% chance when you get hit to summon a golem. And that golem was like, I think it was a BAT or something, right? So it was one of the Gatling gun guys. And 90-second cooldown, so it was obviously always overshadowed by Ogre anyway. Ogre easier to get, cheaper to get on the TP and everything, and then this wasn't even, you know, that great. But looking at the new version of it, you get some extra precision, so that's nice. And then summon a golem while in combat with a 60-second cooldown. So let's be very clear about this, because whenever this comes up, this is this exact terminology here. What this might suggest to you is that you go in combat, you instantly get your golem buddy. Which, by the way, from just like a gameplay loop standpoint, I think is probably really fun. And I think, you know, for new players who are playing their minion mancers and stuff, when they pick up this rune set, it will feel good that it appears straight away. It feels more like a real companion and function of you, rather than just randomly appearing every now and then. You know, you can really guarantee it will be there. So reading this, you might think it's summon when you get in combat, 60-second cooldown. 60 seconds later, it summons again. Maybe not a new one. Maybe the old one dies and the new one, and it gets replaced. But, you know, 60 seconds later it comes out. As long as you're in combat, every time that ICD rolls through, it comes back. That's what you might think it's going to be, and that's what I think the correct way of doing it should be in terms of expectations and stuff. But that's not actually what happens, I think you've been saying in the comments. The truth is, it's just once ever. Like our friend, the fire runes above. at the start, you only get it once. So over really long engagements, it's now worse, I guess. But in truth, I think overall this is still probably the better version for it. If you're in open world PvE, you're going to be breaking combat so frequently. In PvP, you'll break combat. The only place it might be worse would be like in big, really long attritive world v world blobs that last over 60 seconds or over 90 seconds. Where, but like, these are such long cooldowns. The idea of pre-patch refreshing it in the same combat scenario anyway, I think would have been so minuscule. What's interesting about this is it's actually paired with some pretty nice stats here as well. And anyway, like you'd want a random bit of AI there. It's just going to get cleaved down anyway in a second in those environments. So yeah, you're going to have to think quite deeply about the area of the game you'd want to play this in. I think this is probably a really fun PvE set. But the issue then is that it comes at the end of a dungeon experience. And I don't think that, because of where you get it from, by the time you've done all your COE grinding for that as a new player, you're probably not that interested in it anymore. I don't know. All right, let's look at Grenth. So back to the God Runes. Condi damage, chill duration, chance to cause chill when you are hit. Condi damage, chill duration, and then when you use a healing skill, nearby foes are chilled. I think we can expect what's coming here. It's all been uniformed into just chill duration. Is this the highest and only rune set in Guild Wars 2 now that does chill duration like this? I don't remember any rune set straight up giving you 50% longer chill duration. That's not a thing, is it? Cool, if only this existed back in the day where Reaper had the pure and awesome version of the trait that meant chill does damage. Damn. So look at that. I wonder whether we'll get a good fear set later. Ooh, that'll be cool. Because the Terror builds. I hope they fix Terror. Anyway, and then the T6 here is when you use a healing skill, nearby foes are damaged and chilled. So I wonder what the damage is. And on a 10-second cooldown? Do you think that this used to do damage as well? It just wasn't listed there. But okay, so they've just made it as pure as possible about the chill. And they substituted the T4. I mean, for what it's trying to be, I think this is a better design now. It's just that what it's trying to be isn't interesting to people in the game at the moment, I think. But I'd be curious to see what this on-heal effect is going to be like. You know, you got to compare these a lot of the time. This is getting compared to the other on-heal effects. So we should put them all in a bucket and see what they look like. Or if you see later, there'll be another on-elite effect. So we've seen artillery barrage on elite. I wonder what other ones will appear as we go further forward. So this one I'm lukewarm on. The Grove Runes. Now, these are pretty prominent, right? Healing power, yeah, fine. Proc duration is pretty dead and weird to have on there. Even more proc duration here. When struck, gain protection. Actually, I'll tell you what. This is reasonable synergy here. This is tanky, sustainy. Here's the really prominent thing, though, right? 50% chance when struck to root the attacking foe. Now, what you'll notice here is this is already pretty 2018ified. It's not 25% chance when struck, below 50% health, do something. It's not while below 20% health, do something. It's just pretty reliable. 50% chance. There's so many packets of damage. Guild Wars 2 combat moves so fast. A 50-50 shot basically means this was guaranteed to trigger every 90 seconds, right? I mean, you can argue, well, if it's basically guaranteed to trigger, why have it 50% at all? And what I'm hoping and guessing we'll see is they get rid of the 50%. But these roots, okay, so it strikes me that back when the game came out, the devs, like, just filtered in random, like, different skill effects through the runes, and they didn't really do any real balanced consideration for how strong each effect was. What's stronger? Burning people around you when struck, like Forgeman runes give us, or creating roots when struck. Who cares? And then they just throw it out. Now, the truth is that this root thing here, it might look quite innocent, but it's a really prominent effect. Like, super, super relevant. This is binding roots, okay? And it will refresh immob on people over and over again. If you don't have available the tool to get rid of it, you know, the cleanse or the double cleanse pulse to move away from it fast enough, if you can't cleave it down, if you don't have the resistance there or whatever, you can really get caught with your pants down. This is great for shaking aggro off, honestly, and on some builds, it's a really cheesy thing. I actually kind of don't want this to be in the game because I hate binding roots that much. I really don't like this effect, and it just feels so weird. And this should be an on-elite effect. If I was going to turn this into anything, I'd make it on-elite skill. bind one person near you and see how that goes and have the cooldown to boot. But a random thing on Struck, this has always been... So I haven't liked it much, but it's a really pronounced rune set. So let's see what they've done. It's all about protection, duration, and healing, which is actually an okay combo there. I can imagine some support scrapper stuff, right? You do a lot with protection and juggling prot there, but you also want the heal power, so I can kind of like that. What is this? When struck, so 100% chance now, create a meadow at your location, granting protection, regeneration, and vigor to allies. Cooldown of 90 seconds. Create a meadow. What skill effect is a meadow going to be? I really can't think off the top of my head. Do you think it's just another, like, little binding roots or something? Do you think it looks like a healing spring, maybe? What animation would that be? Because they're not going to have built a new one. Create a meadow? Maybe I just don't know Ranger well enough. You guys can tell me in the comments here. My goodness. So the actual boons you get is, first of all, protection, which is excellent because it rolls into these. Regen and vigor. It gives it to allies. I'll tell you what. Grove runes on a support scrapper or something. That seems really interesting to me. Because you're pulsing... Well, I don't know if you're pulsing it out. It's a meadow. So what does that mean? Does it pulse? Oh my god, though. And every time you do that, you do extra cleanse and stuff. Vigor and regen at the same time. 90-second cooldown's pretty long. But I like this, actually. I like this change a lot just because you've got rid of such a prominent, like, wonky, like, distinct effect. Interesting. Definitely want to look at those. See if you guys have had any experience on that. Let me know. Guardian. Another pretty pronounced rune set here. So we're looking at toughness, healing, toughness, healing, toughness, healing. When you block a foe's attack, burn for 1 second on a 2-second ICD. So there's a lot of build craft that you could play with on this. And I kind of like the idea of these still having this as the T6, but brought up to snuff a little bit, and players having that interesting distinction. All right, I'm on a heavy block build. Do I want to run Defender runes, as I discussed on the previous part? If you missed it, it's heal for 5% of your max health every time you block. Or do I want to run Guardian runes, that is like a way to utilize those blocks offensively? I like the idea of them, like, pairing those two off like that. So toughness and healing, you know, that's an okay combo there, if you care about those things. Looking over here... we've got the extra, so they doubled up on the toughness here. What makes them decide to go toughness or healing? I don't know. But so really heavy toughness, and then, okay, the T6 didn't actually change. Maybe that's fine. When you block a foe's attack, burn that foe for 1 second. We have to read these very precisely, guys, by the way, because even the slightest little tweak, you might miss something important. But yeah, it seems like it is pretty much exactly the same, right? Burn for a second, cool down to 2 seconds. Okay. Next, we're on Holbrack. So Holbrack, very prominent. I don't know really what people are running well versus well at the moment, but one of my main impressions when I was playing it most recently was stack as much minus condi duration on you as possible, and Holbrack was always good for this. Power set, might duration on there as well, might application, minus 20% condition duration. It was a good set. Let's see what they've done with it. The T4. Oh my god, look at this. Oh, okay. So they've split the incoming minus condition duration between the T4 and 6, which has essentially eliminated this. So this rolling skill on hit disappears from the rune set. Cleans it up a bit. And then at the bottom, they've gone to just boon duration instead of might. So they've made this a little bit more generically applicable to more builds now, because, you know, you're just getting regular boon duration. I think that's a buff, isn't it? That's a buff to Holbrack, staying true to what Holbrack was about. Why any of this has to do with the Norn of Holbrack, I don't know, but let's not get into that. Ice! Oh, here was another chill duration set. Yeah, but it didn't go as heavy, did it? Alright, so Vitality with chill duration. When struck caused this Ice Nova. That was basically a Hydromancy Sigil, okay? And then 7% damage against chilled foes. You can see how Ice is like the equivalent of Fire. But with the way that the game works, there's quite, you know, Fire would just be so much better for builds like this. Especially, you know, oh, I have a damage modifier on a Vitality stack. Like, Vitality stack runes have always struggled. And so, you know, this isn't going to be enough here. If there were no attributes with it, all of a sudden it would be an interesting thing immediately. But just because you're forced to take Vitality, this is not justified, right? So anyway, chill duration and damage against chill foe. The chill rune set. We've already got a pretty distinct chill rune set already. So what have they done? Chill duration, vitality, chill duration. The T4 has been eliminated. And the T6 has 7% damage against chilled foes and create an Ice Nova at your foe's location when you use an elite skill. Okay, it depends on the Ice Nova. If it's still the damage... Okay, so Hydromancy Sigil, there's kind of a long story with it. Back in the day, it could actually crit, and you could use it to supplement certain bursts, and it was amazing. And it was actually, it had a higher base damage and modifier than even the Geomancy Sigil, which was its bleed equivalent. Then they kind of made it uniform and tweaked some stuff around. I don't even think Hydromancy exists in PvP in particular anymore. Does it? But so it depends what they mean by Ice Nova now. Is the damage good on this? What's the range? It doesn't tell me. Create an Ice Nova at my foe's location when I use an elite skill. So if I'm, across the map and I target someone and you use my elite, can I hit them? Knowing the coding and how often infinite range skills appear in Guild Wars 2, I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. But so, an on-demand, hey, I can chill you if I want to when I use my elite is interesting. Also, this is also pretty cool. It's a 10-second ICD. So, how does this interact with... So, you want to think about very low cooldown elites. How does this interact, again, with, like, Mortar? What does that mean? When I equip my Mortar, I can chill someone? At what range? And do damage at the same time? I gotta see this, man. I gotta see this. Obviously, Mortar is not the only low cooldown elite, but that's, totally on demand, right? Interesting. Looking at Infiltration next. This was always a cool idea for a rune set. I've just never really ran it or been that interested. So it loaded precision on you, but 2% damage when they get below half health. And then if you got up to T3, it was 4% damage. So this was a total of 6% damage. And then down here, it's 12% damage. So you've got to remember the above, we already saw Eagle runes on the previous part. Eagle runes is the same thing now. And it's, what did they give it? 10% below 50%. So this is only slightly more than Eagle runes, but you've sacrificed a lot of attributes. And then the T6, I mean, I've always liked this. When you get low on health, stealth for any class in the game. Oh, it's such a prominent, it's a wild thing. Maybe too wild. Maybe they think that this shouldn't be here. So let's see what they've done. Oh, look at this. Okay, so it's become power and precision. So immediately, much more viable attributes right here, straight away. The damage below 50% health is nerfed to 10%, but it's easy to read. So when they get below half health, you do that. And then it's gain vigor when entering stealth. This is a really curious thing to do for a rune because stealth is like... Runes tend to not key into specific mechanics that only a couple of classes or an individual class has. So, like, you won't find a rune set that integrates with shattering unless it was, like, specifically the Mesmer runes or something very precise, right? So, here's an interesting thing. By doing a rune that keys into stealth, they're kind of saying stealth is... They're realizing that stealth used to be very much just a thiefy thing, right? But as the years have gone on, stealth's availability on all the other classes going up, right? And it's slowly becoming more and more available. I think Engineer was the only other class that had stealth right back at the beginning, maybe. But, like, it's a big thing on Rangers now as well. You got to think about future elite specializations, too. I would expect to see it splash out a bit more. And, of course, I know some of you are thinking it. Obviously, combo fields. Anyone has always been able to combo in a smoke field. But the question has just been, where have those smoke fields come from? And it tends to be very obscure places, or, like, thieves and, NGs as well. So doing this is kind of interesting to me for that reason. It's obvious... Well, I don't know. I say obviously. The thing with this T6, as it used to be, is it was, again, when struck below 20% health, that health threshold was just way too low for it. The risk inherent to that, to actually get the escape was so unlikely. Like, you got any Mesmers out there that have played a lot with Deceptive Evasion, which is a trait that gives them a free clone and stealth when they get low on health. That's at like 50%, and even that can be clunky to deal with sometimes and execute properly. This was just way too low. But it might have just been unworkable, to be honest. If you raise that too high, can you imagine how frustrating it would be if this rune set was like meta and better? Like, everyone you're fighting, no matter what class or build or what they're doing, you always have to contend with the fact that you get them below half health and now they've stealthed. Like, that would make me want to vomit, honestly. That would just break the game in so many ways, like the flow of the game and the entertainment behind it. So, eliminating the idea altogether is kind of good. What have they done, though? Vigor when entering stealth? I think if they were going to do this, the way I would have wanted this is gain like 25 endurance when entering stealth with the cooldown or whatever. Because the idea being, now with this rune set, when you stealth, if you've stealthed at a clutch moment to save your life, you get the dodge straight away. But stealthing and then having to wait to dodge out of the heat, I don't know. I don't know about it. Maybe what I just said is way too strong anyway. And you don't want really strong effects on really long cooldowns as far as passives are concerned. They get too weird. Anyway, so yeah, interesting discussion. Not sure how I feel about it. Even just this on its own, by the way. Just that on its own is kind of cool. Moving on. We've got crate runes. So the ultimate bleed Condi set. Condi damage, bleed duration, apply bleed when you get struck. And then there was the elite, okay? So the T6 was always pretty prominent. When you use an elite, you inflict bleed, torment, and poison. This was actually, in the grand scheme, a recent update. The last Rune Overhaul added this. And I've actually always liked this. Poison on demand on an elite. This is great. You don't have poison. You're trying to do big cleave over a body, and you don't have poison on your build. Never fear. Crate runes are here. I mean, the fact it was tied to bleeds and you had to be a kind of a bleed Condi build kind of, you know, was a bit of a shame. And it even gave you some cover for that as well. More bleeding, more torment. I always kind of liked the idea of crate. Let's see what we're running with instead here. So condition damage, bleed duration, condition damage, bleed duration, condition damage, bleed duration. The T4 randomness has disappeared. And now the elite is the same, but on a slightly lower cooldown. Why did they feel this was important to drop that? Is that because they want it all uniformed at 30 effects like this now? We saw that this one up here is on 30, but that's on dodge. On enter stealth, sorry. Anyway, yeah, that got, you know, a slight retweak, a slight shuffle. It was in a good place already. I'm alright with that. Next, leadership. Okay, so word on the grapevine is this one's been important as far as PvE, as far as chronos in PvE and raids and things are concerned. I think. So this was like a really ultimate boon duration set. As you can see, 5% boon duration, 10% boon duration, 15% boon duration. Just so much boon duration on here. And then, you know, just generic buff to all stats. When you use an elite skill, convert Condis into boons of all nearby allies. So this is a bit like Lissa runes, which do a similar thing, but it's more selfless. Really, really potent. Let's see what they've done. So it's... What's different here? Is anything different here? Okay, so they nerfed it by 5%. So we got 5, 15, 25 versus 5, 15, 30. Yeah, so this is worth 5% less now. Has that really been a big deal, the 5% less? And then when you use an elite skill, convert up to 3 conditions into boons. Oh, they buffed this. Well, I'm curious what they do with Lissa runes now. This is now an AoE Lissa rune proc. AoE Lissa runes. So, Lissa at best have got something awesome. Cooldown's the same. Maybe you guys can give me more insight here onto how this actually affected Chronos. Chronos have gone through so much stuff recently. If you watched the recent balance with boots I did as well, there's so much going on with all the Signet of Inspiration change and stuff. Oh my god. Okay, moving on. Lich runes. Okay, quick story. You know, I've been away from the game. I did squeeze out a couple of streams while I was away. And people told me about the blog post where they announced this, the rune changes. And when I saw the preview, I thought that Lich would get really good. And I bought on the trading post a bunch of Lich runes just in case. So let's look at old Lich, all right? There's Vitality, not that interesting. It's Condition Duration, not that interesting, right? But then you had the T6. To me, Lich runes should be the ultimate minion, you know, Death Magic Necromancer, Minion Mancer build. So Jagged Horrors, as a function of Guild Wars 2, are clearly designed to be like these little critters that you swarm out, you mass out, and it's like death by 1,000 cuts, you know? Look at how they're essentially treated as enemies as gravelings in Ascalon Catacombs, right? Like, that's kind of the idea of Jagged Horrors. Jagged Horrors also, in Guild Wars 1, you know, kind of had that massing idea. The original trait that procced these was summon a Jagged Horror when you kill someone, and they would just keep stacking up and up and up and up and up. And the old Lich form used to swarm them out on the mark. Then people started abusing it and found ways to kind of break it and summon loads of them, and the adrenal mushroom interactions and stuff, which led to them getting gutted in the Lich form side of things, and the trait as well. The trait is now pathetic. It like basically means you can only ever have 2 out, and the runes have always been rubbish as well. It summoned a single Jagged Horror every minute. And I think that they now have a hard capped, they can only last a minute now. They always die. The idea used to be that they'd be degenerating in health, and as long as you could heal them, they'd stay around, you know? And I wish that the devs had played into that more, rather than just hard capping it. So it's just so boring now. But, listen, the preview showed the idea that this stuff wasn't on hit anymore. It was just in combat. And I was operating on the assumption that the Lich runes might change, so that enter combat, get a Jagged Horror. 10 seconds later, it summons another one. 10 seconds later, it summons another one. And, you know, you can force them to die eventually, but if you can get a few out, that's what this should be. It should feel really good for that minion mancy thing, you know. That would be really flavorful and fun. It doesn't have to be, like, great for endgame, but that I think that the game deserves a rune like that, you know. But maybe server considerations and stuff stop them. So let's look at the new version. Vitality. Condition duration, vitality. So we get 4% Condi damage slapped on there now, which is like a very small consolation. And then they didn't even really change this. So it's now not 50% chance when struck. It's as soon as you go in combat, but it's 60-second cooldown, and it will only ever do it once in a single combat scenario. So let's imagine right now we're running through, I don't know, the Plains of Ruin. The Fields of Ruin. I combine that with Plains of Ashford there. Either map, right? We're running through it. And we kill some char. We get a Jagged Horror from the first combat. We enter combat a few seconds later to kill like a fire elemental or something. Well, we don't get the Jagged Horror because the cooldown's still up. Then our original one dies, and finally he comes back. I mean, it's such a minor tweak. Pretty lame. I also noticed in game, by the way, when I moused over these runes, it said like something like it was an element, like it was the blessed element. Has anyone seen that? That was really, really odd to me. But yeah, so nonetheless, needless to say, my investment did not pay off, and Lich did not get the treatment I was hoping. All right, here's Lissa. Very excited to see what they've done with this. So precision, condition duration, pretty much a dud. Precision again. When you use a heal skill, gain a random boon. I'm expecting this to disappear. When you use an elite skill, convert up to 5 conditions into boons. Oh, okay, so hold on. This is saying 5. I've already noticed in game it's 3. So this has been nerfed. Hold on, let's have a look. Precision, condition duration, boon duration. Okay, so the T4 turned into just generic boon duration instead of gain a boon. I can see what the devs are doing here. They're like, okay, we don't want this to be an actual effect. Let's just make it passive and sort of similar to what it was before. Boon duration, fine. They're not actually trying to do anything interesting. They're just trying to make the new effect somewhat similar to the old one, but under the new format. They've given us an extra 10% condition duration here. And then they've nerfed the on-active. So this is convert... It used to be 5 conditions into boons. It's now just 3. Okay, so tell me something. Somebody tell me something. Why would I ever run Lissa over leadership now? Ever. I mean, leadership doesn't give you so much precision stack, but are you serious right now? You get all those other attributes. You get all that other more worthwhile boon duration. And you get to do the same thing, but AoE. What? On the same cooldown? Is it? Well, let me scroll up. Let me find this again here. Where is it? Yeah, look. 45 seconds when you use an elite skill. I don't understand. How is that at all? I mean, that's lunacy. Okay, I can buy it as long as this overhaul is a platform for more. But, you know, that they'll build on top of and soon. But what? Am I going to have to wait another 2 years for them to finally look back at runes? Is this okay now? I don't know. What am I missing, guys? Is there some little thing? Guess we'll see. Next, we've got Melandrew. So, toughness, vitality, incoming stun duration. So, this is a distinct idea, and I'd like to see this. Just reduce as much condition duration as possible and stun duration. That's its niche. The toughness and vitality even fits it reasonably well. Let's see what they've turned it into. So, the same thing, but it looks like it's had a slight nerf. So, what we have is the stun duration here, which was on T4 before. They've moved to T6. So to get your stun duration reduction, you got to go all the way into the line, which is fine. But then as far as condition duration is concerned, it's now only 20% total, when before it was 25% total. So you've lost 5% on incoming condition duration reduction. That's a lot of shuns that we just said there. So a slight nerf on Melandrew runes. Not sure why they felt the need. Was Melandrew being used a lot? The comparison to Holbrak, I guess, is important. Holbrak being the power stack, this one being toughness. Alright, so Mercy. Mercy is one of my favorite rune sets in the game. It's amazing. I used to have a lot of fun with this before they realized it was way too OP for competitive modes, so it's not there anymore. But really, really fun rune set. Toughness. Gain 400 toughness when reviving. Revive people with more health. Revive people faster. What a rune set. Beautiful. Truly beautiful. Let's see what they've done. They destroyed the toughness while reviving. Again, so I guess that's sort of like a skill effect that they wanted to get rid of, I guess, maybe, or like a modifier that only triggers under certain scenarios. Oh, hello. Okay, so no. What they've done is they've changed 400 toughness into 20% damage reduction. 20% damage reduction is worth a lot more than 400 toughness. Holy crap. I think it is anyway. And then you no longer revive. And then they just bundled the other two into the T6. Look at that. So there's a buff. They've buffed Mercy. Why have they buffed Mercy? So you still revive people faster, and you still revive them at more health. That's like... So I like the structuring, by the way. With regard to what you get each time you pick up a new rune and slot it, I think it is more fun now. Like, the T6s really feel like a big benefit. You know, you really are excited to get that last T6. If the itemization of the RPG aspects of the game was slightly different, I could imagine this being a prominent aspect of the experience. But this is kind of cool. So, yeah, they've turned 400 toughness into 30% damage reduction. You even now get a bit of healing power on there, which wasn't there before. So they've just buffed. I guess buffs equals good design, right, guys? That's how we go about internet discussion. So, yeah, I love it. Great. Good design that you buffed it. Brilliant. Next, we're on Mesmer. This has a distinct niche, power and precision, whatever, but really what you want to look at is days duration. It's a really interesting modifier. You don't see it elsewhere. It's had its applications over the years. Let's see what we're looking at next. This is all the same. Hello. So, 33% days duration and 10% damage modifier to dazed foes. I mean, it's a nice treat to put on there, and it's a nice thing to, you know, that rolls into the idea of the rune. Can I now imagine a build that dives into it? Not off the top of my head. But chaining dazes now for people on Mesmer runes? It's interesting. You know, dazing someone and triggering lots of vulnerability and then fragility before your burst, you know, with your big GS burst and stuff, kind of was a thing. But you'd still probably want to be on a straight up more aggressive rune set. I mean, power and precision on there too. I do kind of like this. As far as the update is concerned, it's a nice little addition. Mirage runes. Alright, and I see now that we've been going over 50 minutes, so this will have to be part 2. Mirage, we ended the first one on Ellie, but we'll have to end this one on Mirage here, guys. Jesus, there's so many runes. You know, I'm disappointed in some of these, but I also kind of don't blame the devs for not going in actual effort, because there's so many runes to do, you know. I just hope that they feel they've really got a good platform at this point to actually start tweaking individual runes and treating them properly. So, right, the last one, Mirage. 25 condition damage, toughness, condition damage, toughness, and then heal when you evade. I've got to be honest, I've never ran Mirage runes, and I don't actually know how strong this heal is. Unfortunately, I must admit. Let's look, though. So, you're getting the same stats, but an additional 125 toughness at the end now. And they've changed the T6 altogether. It's inflict torment for 4 seconds when you successfully evade an attack. Now, this is weird again to me because there's no ICD. No ICD is really crazy. Because, I mean, there must be one, right? There must be. Because when you dodge roll, you can evade a lot of packets of damage. You know, you can evade up to like 10, 15 attacks in a single dodge. Did I just put out 15 torment? I mean, that's obscene. I know it's only a 4-second duration. But, so I wonder, there's a lot of information here we don't have. We also don't have, I mean, what, is this point blank around you? Is it AoE? Is it infinite range again, you know? If a ranger shoots me from 1500 range and then turns away while the arrow's flying at me and I evade it, you know, do I torment him from all the way over there? That's a bit of a ridiculous thing to say, but you get what I mean? This is, curious. I mean, it fits the idea of Mirage better, right? Because obviously Mirage gets a lot of torment and Mirage likes to evade a lot. And, you know, the sustain of healing when you evade an attack, again, on a 20-second cooldown. The T6 for blow, I think the new version of the rune is really interesting and better. I'd just like to see how useful this actually is. So I like the idea. I like the impulse. All right, so we'll be starting next time on Monk Runes, the definitive healing support set as far as I'm concerned, pre-patch. And tomorrow we'll round all of this out, hopefully, and see how that goes. So thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'll give you more first impressions coming up as the week goes along. See you soon.